I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in my Los Angeles penthouse, adjusting the sleeves of a plain black button-up. Not my usual style. I preferred tailored jackets and high-grade wool, but today I had to look harmless, understated, like someone who definitely didn't just approve a $50 million acquisition the night before. The MacBook I only ever used during family visits sat open on my desk. On its screen, a handful of mediocre digital sketches. I'd made sure they looked amateurish, unthreatening, just enough to maintain the illusion my family had been clinging to for the past decade. On the kitchen counter, an embossed invitation caught the sunlight. Celebrate the Morrison legacy, the kind of title only my brother Brandon could slap onto a party without irony. The reunion was, once again, being held at his beachfront mansion in Malibu. Subtlety had never been the Morrison family's style. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophia, my coup. All contracts finalized. Brandon still doesn't know Dreamscape is the buyer. We're ready. I smiled to myself. 10 years of hiding in plain sight, pretending to be the underachiever, the family oddball, and it was finally about to pay off. Not with revenge for revenge's sake. No screaming matches, no family feuds, just facts, paperwork, and one very public, very poetic reveal. The drive to Malibu was long, giving me time to reflect. My mother, Julia, had built Morrison Tech with the kind of fervour most reserved for religion. My brother, Brandon, had stepped into the company like it was birthright. Harvard MBA, Forbes feature, bespoke suits, the golden boy. And then there was me, the disappointment, the illustrator, the guy who could have gone far if he'd just followed the plan. They didn't know I'd been pulling double shifts, art school by day, business school by night. They didn't know I'd used my first animation prize money to hire a tiny team and launch a studio from my studio apartment. They didn't know that the little company they'd never bothered to Google, Dreamscape Animation Studios, was mine, and that we'd just bought out Morrison Tech under their noses. They didn't know a damn thing, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Brandon's Malibu estate looked exactly how I remembered it, a shrine to coastal excess, glass walls, marble floors, zero soul. I parked my beat-up Toyota Corolla 3 houses down. My real car, a gunmetal Porsche Taycan, was tucked safely back in my building's private garage in downtown LA. I only brought out the Corolla for family appearances. It helped maintain the barely getting by illustrator persona they were so comfortable projecting onto me. As I walked up the driveway, I could already hear them. The familiar hum of calculated success, IPO talk, stock tips, strategic acquisitions, the soundtrack of every Morrison gathering. The front door opened just as I reached it. Ethan, my mother, Julia, greeted me with that perfect balance of surprise and judgment. We weren't sure you were coming. Thought maybe you had a gallery thing. She waved her hands vaguely in the air, like the concept of art might stain her dress. I kissed her cheek and offered a sheepish shrug. Had to wrap up a freelance project. Tight deadline. Aha, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Still doing those little animations? Still doing them, I echoed. Inside, the house was bursting at the seams with the Morrison elite, VCs, founders, Brandon's buddies from business school, and a healthy dose of family members who all somehow looked exactly like LinkedIn profile pictures. The only photo of me on the walls was from high school, right before I threw away my Wharton acceptance to study digital art. Every other frame? Brandon in a tux, Brandon on a yacht, Brandon shaking hands with some governor. Ethan, came the voice I'd been expecting. Brandon was across the room, drink in hand, dressed like GQ, threw up on him. Navy suit, no tie, just enough scruff to say, "I'm important, but chill." His eyes did a full scan of my outfit. A Target button-up, khakis, and the same beat-up loafers I wore to Thanksgiving 2 years ago. "You look," he paused, trying to land on something polite. "Comfortable." "Thanks," I said, letting the moment hang. "Your place is incredible, man." "Must be doing well." Brandon beamed. "Just closed a major acquisition. We bought out a rising competitor in the enterprise content space. Guess who's branching into digital animation?" I raised my eyebrows, all innocence. "Animation? That's new." "It's all strategy," he said with a dismissive wave. "We'll hire creatives for the drawing stuff. Execution's just the side dish. The real meat is in scaling content infrastructure. Synergy, you know?" I nodded like I didn't run one of the most successful animation studios in the country. Sophia texted me under the table. "Everything confirmed. Press release drops at 9 a.m. tomorrow." Board transition paperwork filed. Across the room, Uncle Patrick was showing off photos of his new golf startup. My cousin Lily offered me a lead on an admin job if you're ever tired of freelance. My own father, Thomas, quiet as always, gave me a side hug and whispered, "Your mum's got an offer for you. Maybe think about it this time." Then came the pitch. Brandon found me again by the hors d'oeuvre. "Listen," he said, putting a hand on my shoulder like we were boys on the same team. "We're hiring entry-level designers for our new content division. Steady pay, corporate benefits. Something real. I told Mom I'd talk to you." I stared at him. The man had no idea the company he was recruiting me into now belonged to me. Still, I played the part. "Wow. That's generous," he nodded. "Just trying to help, bro. I know art's a passion, but eventually you've got to step into the real world." That was rich, coming from a guy who once invested in NFTs of llama-suited CEOs. I gave him a tight smile. "I'll think about it." He clinked his glass against mine. "Good man. Let's build something real together." "Oh, we will," I thought. "Just not the way you think." The reunion dragged deep into the evening. I played the role like it was second nature now, the underwhelming artist brother, sipping his soda, nodding politely at every backhanded compliment tossed his way. "You ever think about teaching?" one aunt asked, eyes flicking over my outfit like it personally offended her. "Like community college or something. That way you can still do your sketches and have benefits." I smiled and said, "I'd consider it." My cousin Lily cornered me later near the fire pit. "I know someone in HR at a marketing firm. They're always looking for junior designers. Super entry level, but it could get your foot in the door." This from the same cousin who once stole my graphics for her high school prom campaign. Still, I thanked her, told her I'd look into it. Same words, same expression I'd used a dozen times that night. They heard what they wanted to hear. Across the lawn, I caught Brandon holding court again, gesturing confidently as he talked about expansion strategy, tech verticals, innovation funnels. I couldn't help but admire it. Not his vision, but his certainty. The man radiated confidence even when he had no idea he was seconds away from becoming a division inside my company. My phone buzzed. "Sophia, final board confirmations in. Morrison Tech officially transitions to Dreamscape tomorrow 9:00 am. Sophia again want us to handle it anonymously." I looked up at the people laughing around me. My mother sipping white wine, Brandon bragging about metrics, family friends whispering about my potential like it was something I'd never fully realized. No, I wanted to be there. Me, I'm attending. In person. I want them to see. Later that night, I slipped away before anyone noticed. Back in my penthouse, I dropped the Target brand disguise onto the chair, shirt, slacks, even the scuffed shoes, and walked barefoot toward the terrace, wrapped in the soft weight of real silk pajamas. The ones that cost more than Brandon's Armani suit. Inside, my real laptop, the machine that had built a media empire, glowed quietly on my desk. On the screen were the final signed documents for Morrison Tech's acquisition. Everything was official. Ownership had already transferred. I poured myself a glass of top-shelf bourbon and stepped outside, the lights of Los Angeles glittering below like the circuit board of some divine machine. In the distance, Malibu glowed like a candle behind the hills. Somewhere down there, Brandon probably thought he'd pulled off the deal of his life. And I'd let him have that moment. I leaned against the railing and closed my eyes, letting the wind cut through the silence. My mind wandered to the early years, those exhausting, brilliant, terrifying months after college, when I'd started Dreamscape with 2 laptops, a couch bed, and a vision. No one believed in it back then. Not my professors, not my family, not even my friends. Digital animation for corporate training, they'd scoff. You're too talented for that. It's not real art. But it was real. It had value. And it turned out there was a massive demand for quality visuals in a world full of ugly PowerPoints and confusing user manuals. We started with animated onboarding videos for HR departments, simple stuff. Then product explainers. Then interactive simulations for hospitals and tech firms. By the time I hit my 5th year, Dreamscape had 60 employees. At 10 years, we passed 200. And tomorrow we'd have one more, Morrison Tech. At 8:30 am sharp, a car waited downstairs. Not the Corolla. Today I dressed like myself, fitted navy suit, pocket square, and cufflinks I'd had custom made to look like stylized phoenix feathers. A nod to the name I'd been using professionally for years, Ethan West. Carter was the name my family expected. West was the name I used to build everything they ignored. Sophia was already in the car, hair pulled back, expression tight. "You sure you want to be there when they find out?" she asked as we drove through downtown. "Yes, they're not going to take it well." "I know. Do you want me to prep security?" "I want you to prep the press release." She looked at me, nodded once. Understood. By 9:00 am, we stepped into the Morrison Tech Tower. It hadn't changed. Same soulless mahogany walls, same leather-bound ego stroking in the lobby, a monument to legacy. My mother had built this company like she was designing a dynasty. Everything screamed tradition and control. I used to walk these halls as a kid, watching Brandon sit in meetings I wasn't invited to, listening to my parents tell me, art is fun, but it's not a future. And here I was, standing in the same elevator, heart steady, suit crisp. The executive floor buzzed with quiet anticipation. I could hear Brandon's voice inside the boardroom before the doors even opened. "Once we finalize the partnership, we'll dominate the corporate content space. This animation studio is the perfect bolt-on." That word, bolt-on, God, he had no idea. Sophia gave me a look. "You ready?" she asked. "Let's begin." She pushed open the doors. Conversation died instantly. Brandon's voice caught mid-sentence. My mother turned from her seat at the head of the table, confused, then concerned, then tight-lipped. "Ethan?" she asked. "This is a closed meeting." I walked calmly to the far end of the room, placed my briefcase on the polished table, and opened it. Inside, contracts, deeds, the full acquisition package with my name on every line. Brandon was already standing. "What is this? Why are you?" "This," I said, "is the transition packet for Morrison Tech's integration into Dreamscape Animation Studios." As of this morning, Morrison Tech is officially a subsidiary of Dreamscape. I'm here as CEO to begin the onboarding process. My mother blinked. Brandon laughed. You're joking. No, I said, sliding the documents across the table. You just sold the company. You just didn't know who the buyer was. Their eyes scanned the paperwork, the seals, the signatures, the valuation. And then they saw it. Ethan West. My mother looked up slowly. You? I founded Dreamscape 10 years ago, I said. Built it from scratch. Market cap of $750 million. You've been trying to partner with us for months. And last week, your board sold Morrison Tech to me. Brandon's hands were shaking. You're not even in business. I've been in business for a decade, I said quietly. You just never looked close enough. Silence. You don't realize how loud silence can be until it fills a boardroom full of people who just realized their reality isn't what they thought it was. Brandon was still flipping through the documents like maybe, just maybe, if he read fast enough, something would reverse. Undo. Make sense. You're Ethan West? He said, voice low, like saying it too loud would make it more true. Yes, the Ethan West who runs Dreamscape. The same. My mother slowly closed the folder in front of her. Her face was unreadable, corporate mask fully on, but her eyes said everything. Hurt, confusion, and something else. Fear. How long? She asked. Not as a mother. As a CEO, 10 years, I replied. She nodded, processing. You kept it from us. No, I said calmly. You never asked. You assumed. Brandon pushed back from the table, standing with both hands braced on the surface, like he needed the wood to keep him grounded. This is a setup, he said. You manipulated the board. There's no way they would have sold if they knew it was you behind Dreamscape. Correct, I said. That's why they didn't know. I went through intermediaries. Just like you do when you're trying to quietly acquire competitors. You taught me that, remember? He stared at me, eyes narrowing. You don't get it. You've destroyed everything. No, I said. I've merged everything. We'll keep your staff, your core tech, but we're not doing business the old Morrison way anymore. Sophia stepped forward and handed out the transition plans. Smart, clean, efficient. Everyone's job was safe, unless they chose not to innovate. That was their decision now. We'll be rebranding over the next 6 months, she said. Operations will shift toward our content-first verticals. Existing contracts will be honored. And leadership, Brandon cut her off. Leadership. What the hell does that mean? It means, I said, you're stepping down. You're welcome to interview for a director-level role in our creative strategy division. He laughed. Sharp. Humorless. Interview for my own company? You sold it, I reminded him. Now it's mine. This is how acquisitions work, Brandon. You wanted to enter digital content. You just did as part of Dreamscape. His face reddened, but he said nothing. I turned to my mother. As for you, Julia, you'll serve in an advisory role through the end of the fiscal year. After that, I assume you'll want to retire. And honestly, you've earned it. For a long moment, she said nothing, just stared at me. And then, softly, she asked, why? I exhaled slowly, because I needed to do this my way. You would have tried to steer it, mold it, turn it into a Morrison brand extension. You never believed that art and business could coexist. You only saw one path to success. But I chose a different one, and it worked. The other board members remained frozen. They'd always deferred to my mother, to Brandon. Now they watched the ground shift beneath them. Sophia checked her phone and looked at me. It's live, I nodded. I pulled out my phone and flipped it around. On the screen, a New York Times headline, Dreamscape Animation acquires Morrison Tech in surprise buyout. Founder Ethan West, revealed as secret CEO. The room went colder than before. Brandon collapsed into his chair, stunned. "You let us believe you were failing," he muttered. "No," I said. "You chose to believe that. I never told you I was struggling. You just assumed success couldn't look like what I was building." My mother stood slowly. "Ethan, save it," I said gently. "This wasn't revenge. It was business. A good one. Morrison Tech needs Dreamscape's innovation to survive. Dreamscape needed your infrastructure to scale. That's it. Clean, mutual, and inevitable. I gathered my things, the briefcase, my phone, my dignity, and turned toward the door. "Oh, and Brandon," I added, "about that junior design role you offered me at the party. I'll have to decline. I'm a bit overqualified." I heard Sophia smirk behind me. We stepped out of the boardroom and into the hallway. I didn't look back. Outside, the air felt different. Not freer, not yet, but clearer. Like a fog had lifted, and what lay ahead wasn't just brighter, it was mine. Back in the car, Sophia said nothing for a moment. Then, "You good?" I glanced down at my hands. Steady, calm, confident. "Yeah," I said. "I'm good." That evening, the family gathered again. Different venue, same faces, only this time we weren't in Brandon's Malibu fortress. We were at La Meridienne, a private rooftop restaurant in West Hollywood. I'd made the reservation under Dreamscape's name, requesting the garden terrace. I wanted the skyline visible when the last illusion finally faded. Everyone was already seated when I walked in. The murmurs quieted. As I passed the tables, the same relatives who'd offered me pity job leads less than 24 hours ago now stared like they were seeing me for the first time. Which, to be fair, they were. Brandon was there, suit pressed, smile missing. My mother sat next to him, perfectly composed. Only a slight tremble in her hand as she set down her wine glass gave her away. I took my place at the head of the table. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I cleared my throat and raised a glass. "To new beginnings," I said, "and to the art of evolution." Polite clinks followed, forced smiles, hollow nods. I didn't need them to mean it. I just needed them to hear it. Dinner unfolded in silence punctuated by awkward questions. "So how long exactly have you?" Someone began before trailing off. Another asked if I'd moved into a new place. I told them I owned the building. "Is it true?" my aunt whispered. "Your worth?" I just smiled. After dessert, I stepped away to take a call, a quick check-in with legal about the press coverage and staff messaging. Everything was running smoothly. When I returned, Brandon was waiting near the railing, overlooking the city. The skyline painted his face in cold light. He didn't turn when I approached. "You humiliated me," he said. "No," I replied. "I didn't say anything you didn't already know. I just stopped pretending. You could have told me. You wouldn't have listened." He exhaled hard. "I thought you were drifting, wasting time. You thought anything outside your playbook was a failure." We stood in silence, the kind between brothers who've never really spoken, not with honesty. Then he looked at me, and his voice cracked just enough to sound real. "You built something incredible." I nodded. "So did you. But you stopped looking forward. That's where you lost it." He didn't argue. After a long pause, he asked, "Do I really have to interview?" "Yes." A faint smirk touched his mouth. "That's cold. That's business." He glanced at the table, then back at me. "And family?" I looked him dead in the eye. "That's earned." He swallowed, nodded once, and walked back inside. My mother came to see me a few days later, not to apologize, not quite, but something close enough to pass for it in Morrison language. She stood in my office, scanning the shelves filled with awards they never acknowledged, Books they never asked about, concept art they never saw. I should have looked closer, she said quietly. I didn't need you to believe in me, I told her. I just needed you not to stand in the way. She turned toward the window, watching the city with distant eyes. I thought I was preparing you for reality, she said. You were preparing me for your reality, I corrected. Mine was different. We didn't hug, no tears. Just mutual understanding, the beginning of something honest. Before she left, she paused at the door. I'm proud of you, Ethan. That one I let land. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. Weeks passed. The story hit every business outlet. Dreamscape's valuation jumped. Morrison Tech stabilized under new leadership. We launched our first collaborative product, a sleek, gamified onboarding platform, and clients loved it. Brandon stayed on, not as CEO, but as Director of Strategic Development. He's actually good at it when he doesn't think he's untouchable. We still don't talk much, but when we do, it's real, and that's enough. Sometimes, I still catch myself staring at the old family photo in my phone. The one where I'm off to the side, smile too big, posture too small, like I didn't belong. I don't erase it. I just remember it for what it was, the setup for the final frame. The new photo, it's framed in my office now, not of people, but of the Dreamscape logo hanging over the building I now own. Below it, a plaque, founded by Ethan West, where imagination builds empires. Funny thing is, the last line of my art school sketchbook still rings the truest. The greatest creations are the ones they never see coming. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I just showed up and took my place at the table. Finally, story 2, I turned 34 last week. I should have been enjoying cake, wine, and a quiet night with my husband. Instead, I ended up holding his hand in an ambulance, watching paramedics shove an IV in his arm, praying he didn't die before we made it to the hospital. The day before, everything had felt normal. Too normal, honestly. It was a hot, sticky June afternoon in Chicago, and I was working on a design for a new client when my husband, Ryan, called out from the living room. Babe, there's a message from my mum. Ugh, that name always brings tension. What's she want now? I asked without looking away from my laptop. She wants to know if we're free for dinner on Sunday. Said she wants to celebrate your birthday. I rolled my eyes. Only if you really want to go, I told him. The truth? I'd rather do just about anything else. Ryan's mum, Loretta, has always had this fake sweet tone that makes your skin crawl. Polite to your face, venom behind the smile. After 4 years of marriage, nothing's changed. She never liked me. I think she still sees me as the woman who stole her golden boy. She's trying, Ellie, Ryan said. Always the optimist. She even said you're becoming a really good wife. Right. That coming from the woman who once gifted me a Christmas sweater sized for a child, and the year before that, a cake with walnuts. I'm allergic to nuts. Deadly allergic. But hey, I didn't know, she claimed, like I hadn't mentioned it twice over Thanksgiving dinner. Is your sister going to be there? I asked. Oh, definitely. Becca's still living at Mum's place. You know how it is. Becca, his younger sister, is the definition of unbothered entitlement. She flunked out of her 3rd job in a row and moved back in with their mum like it was some kind of royal return. And for some reason, she's always looked at me like I'm a virus. Honestly, I'm not even sure she knows my name. Still, I agreed to dinner because Ryan, he really tries. And part of me hoped Loretta had finally started seeing me as part of the family. That hope, gone by the next morning. The morning of my birthday, our doorbell rang around 9:00 am. The delivery guy handed over a sleek, refrigerated package. My name was on the label, but the sender was Loretta Harper. Ryan peeked over my shoulder. Whoa, fancy. Looks like one of those gourmet chocolate brands. We opened the box together. Inside was a beautiful matte black case with gold lettering. Maison du Cacao. It's the type of brand influencers name drop while sipping imported tea. Pricey, decadent. Definitely not something Loretta would typically spend money on, especially for me. There was a little handwritten note tucked into the box. Hand-picked just for you, Loretta. Ryan was thrilled. See? She's warming up to you. I wanted to believe that, I really did, but something about the whole thing felt off. Still, I smiled and said, "That's really thoughtful. I'll try them later." Ryan cooked us dinner that night. It was sweet. He even broke out a bottle of decent wine, not the dusty $5 one he saves for Wednesdays. After dinner, while I was clearing dishes, he opened the chocolate box. "These look amazing," he said, already halfway into popping one into his mouth. "I'm full," I told him. "Maybe tomorrow." "Suit yourself," he said, unbothered, chewing happily. "God, these are incredible." I went to take a shower, tired but feeling loved. By the time I got out, Ryan was curled up on the couch with a blanket over his lap, watching some sci-fi show, the now empty chocolate box next to him. "You didn't eat all of them?" He gave me a guilty grin. I couldn't help it. I just laughed. "Guess you owe me a new box." The next morning, everything unraveled. Ryan was up early, but he looked off. Pale, sweating, glassy-eyed. I figured it was just a sugar hangover or something, until he suddenly sprinted to the bathroom and started throwing up violently. I rushed to him, alarmed. "What's going on?" "Did something else upset your stomach?" He could barely talk. "Call, ambulance." My blood ran cold. Within minutes, EMTs were in our apartment, hooking Ryan up to fluids, asking questions I couldn't answer. What had he eaten? When did the symptoms start? Had he consumed anything unusual? Then it hit me. "The chocolates," I whispered, "from his mum." The EMTs gave each other a look. They didn't say anything, but I could see the gears turning. At the hospital, Ryan was whisked off for tests. I stayed in the waiting room, too anxious to sit still. My phone buzzed. It was Loretta calling. I picked up, trying to keep my voice even. "Hello? Ellie, good morning. I was just checking. Did you get the chocolates?" My stomach twisted. "Yeah, we got them. Ryan ate them all last night." There was a pause. I swear I heard her voice catch. "He ate all of them." "Yes." "Oh." That was all she said. She hung up shortly after, sounding almost shaken. Weird, right? Minutes later, Ryan's phone rang. It was her again. He didn't answer. He was unconscious by then. But she kept calling. Again. And again. I didn't put it together until the doctor pulled me aside. "He's suffering from a form of food-borne toxin exposure," he said. "Not a common one. We're sending samples for toxicology." Toxin. That word made my whole body go cold. The doctor asked if he'd eaten anything suspicious. I mentioned the chocolates. "We'll need the packaging," he said. "It could be crucial." I nodded. "I'll bring it in." But when I got home to grab the box, it was gone. Becca had been to the apartment. She'd shown up out of nowhere, saying she wanted to help. I'd foolishly told her where we lived earlier that morning. I should have known better. When I called and asked about the chocolate box, she claimed she couldn't find it. But I know it was there. Hours later, a detective showed up at the hospital. They'd found the box, not in our trash, but in Becca's car trunk. And inside that beautiful, expensive box, traces of arsenic. Loretta and Becca were arrested on the spot. The hours after Loretta and Becca were arrested were a blur. Ryan was still in the ICU, hooked up to in the fourth, and barely responsive. The hospital confirmed what the detective had already told me. The toxins in the chocolate weren't from spoiled ingredients. They were chemical, deliberate. And the craziest part, according to the lab, the dosage wasn't high enough to kill a full-grown man quickly, but it would have been enough to really hurt someone smaller. Someone like me. I sat in the hospital hallway with my friend Marissa, who showed up the second I texted her what happened. "Ellie," she said, squeezing my hand, "I don't think they were trying to poison Ryan." I looked up, exhausted. "What are you saying? I mean, think about it. Who were the chocolates for?" That's when it hit me. Like a gut punch. They were never meant for him. They were meant for me. I started piecing things together, and it was like seeing a picture slowly come into focus, except the picture was horrifying. The cake with nuts, the sweater that nearly cut off circulation to my arms, the constant mistakes Loretta made that somehow only ever affected me. The worst part was that I brushed off so many of those red flags. I told myself she was clueless, just a little passive-aggressive, a difficult woman who never liked her son's choice of partner. But no, this wasn't about liking or disliking. It was about control. A couple days later, Ryan was awake, though still groggy and weak. He looked at me from the hospital bed with bloodshot eyes and a tremble in his voice. "Did my mom really?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "She did." He looked away. "Why?" I didn't know how to answer that right away. Because what kind of mother tries to poison their son's wife? How do you explain that? I held his hand and told him what I'd overheard in the hallway. See, earlier that day, I went to get coffee from the hospital cafe. On the way back, I took a wrong turn and passed by one of the private rooms. The door was cracked, just slightly open. I heard Becca's voice. "Mom, we messed up. He ate all of it." Then Loretta hissed, "Keep your voice down. We'll deny everything." I froze. Becca whispered, "They're going to test the chocolate. You think they'll find it?" "They won't find enough," Loretta snapped. "It was a light dose. She was supposed to get sick. That's it. Just sick enough that Ryan would finally see she doesn't belong." That was the moment I knew. I stepped away before they saw me, my whole body shaking. The detective later confirmed that the chocolates had been tampered with. A lab technician found microdoses of arsenic in several pieces. Becca's fingerprints were all over the box, and the packaging had been tossed into a dumpster behind their house, except one box had somehow ended up in the trunk of her car. You'd think if you're going to commit a crime, you'd at least get your cover-up straight. But then again, people like Loretta always think they're too clever to get caught. Back at the hospital, Ryan was struggling to come to terms with it all. She raised me. She took care of me. She wasn't perfect, but how could she do this? I didn't have an answer, not one that would make it easier. But the truth was, she hadn't been taking care of anyone but herself. Everything Loretta did, every passive jab, every cruel gift, it all made sense now. This was a woman who'd built her identity around being the center of her son's universe. And then I showed up. I didn't want to leave anything to chance. So once Ryan was stable enough, we went back to Loretta's house. He still had a spare key. She and Becca were out on bail, and I figured it was the only time we'd have to get in without a confrontation. "Are you sure about this?" he asked me as we stood in the doorway. "I need to know if there's more." He nodded. We went in. Her house was immaculate, of course. Pristine, spotless, not a single thing out of place. But underneath that perfect surface, everything felt wrong, cold. We started in her home office. Locked drawer. Ryan picked it open with a butter knife. Don't ask how he knows how to do that. and inside we found stacks of documents. One caught my eye immediately, an updated life insurance policy. It had Ryan's name on it, 2 beneficiaries, me and Loretta, but next to my name, a post-it note, to be removed. Next to that was another policy, for my life insurance. Ryan stared at it in disbelief. Did I sign this? You said your mum handled the paperwork, I reminded him. He nodded slowly. I didn't even think twice. She said it was to streamline everything. We dug deeper. Bank loan statements, credit card debt. Loretta was drowning financially and hiding it well. Worse, some of the debt was taken out in Ryan's name, without his knowledge. Suddenly, it all made sense. If I got sick, if I looked unstable, if our marriage got rocky, maybe he'd leave me, and Loretta could swoop back in and save him. Or, and this is the darker theory, maybe they really were planning to kill me, just slowly, quietly, let it look like bad luck. I thought we'd seen it all until I opened a small drawer under her vanity. Inside was a photo of me, a snapshot from our wedding, torn at the edges. A pin was stuck through the corner of it, and next to it, tiny labelled bottles of herbs and powders. Not all of it was illegal, but enough of it sent a chill through my spine. We also found a laptop, thankfully unlocked. Search history, undetectable poisons, how much arsenic to cause symptoms, slow poisoning versus fast. Ryan sat down, his face pale. This is proof, I said. And that's when the front door opened. Becca stood there, staring at us, like she couldn't believe we were real. What the hell are you doing? Ryan stood up, looking for answers. You don't have the right. You tried to poison my wife. She didn't deny it. She just laughed, this broken, bitter laugh. You were never supposed to marry her. She ruined everything. Everything? Ryan echoed. What does that even mean? Becca crossed her arms. Mum had plans. She was going to pay off the house with the insurance. We were going to start fresh. Then you came along. That's when I realized it was never about me. I was just the wall they crashed into. We handed over the laptop, the insurance papers, the powders, everything to the detective. Within 24 hours, Loretta confessed to everything. Not because she was sorry, but because the evidence was airtight. She thought Ryan would never believe me. But now, he couldn't not believe it. The trial started 3 months after Loretta and Becca were arrested. Ryan and I had moved out of our apartment by then. Too many memories, too much fear. Every creak in the floor made me jump. Every delivery box gave me flashbacks. So we packed up, found a quiet little rental house an hour outside the city, and started over in a town where no one knew our names. It wasn't home yet, but it felt like air. The courtroom was cold, not just the temperature, but the energy. Loretta sat there in a beige pantsuit, hands folded in her lap like she was attending church. Becca looked pissed off the entire time, arms crossed, eyes rolling. No remorse, just anger that they got caught. Ryan didn't say much during the hearings. He sat beside me, jaw tight, hands clasped, like if he let go of control for even a second, he'd fall apart completely. The prosecution laid it all out. Tampered chocolates, insurance fraud, financial deception, intent to harm. Everything we had found at Loretta's house was turned into evidence, including the laptop, including the photos, including the insurance contracts with my name crossed out, like I was some error they were trying to delete. Their lawyer tried to argue it was an unfortunate misunderstanding, that the chocolates weren't meant to hurt anyone, that Loretta was just a concerned mother. But then the toxicology report came out. Then the recorded hospital hallway conversation I'd overheard got played. Then the search history on Loretta's computer, and suddenly there wasn't much room left for pretending. The judge sentenced Loretta to 5 years in prison, not just for the poisoning, but for conspiracy, insurance fraud, and reckless endangerment. Becca got a lighter sentence, 3 years probation and a criminal record. She agreed to a plea deal after flipping on her mum and admitting she knew about the plan from the beginning. She didn't look at us once as she left the courtroom. Loretta did, though. Eyes like ice, cold, hollow. No apology, no regret. Just this look that said, "How dare you?" Like we betrayed her. After the sentencing, we walked out of the courthouse into a pale autumn morning. The sky was washed out grey, the kind that feels like it's waiting to snow. I turned to Ryan and said, "It's finally over." He didn't say anything right away, just nodded, then wrapped his arm around my shoulder and pulled me in close. We stood there for a long time. Two people who had nearly been pulled apart by family, still standing, still breathing, still together. We didn't tell many people about what happened. Ryan's co-workers knew he'd been hospitalized, but not why. My friends back home had heard rumors, but I kept the details vague. I just wasn't ready to explain to people that my own mother-in-law had tried to poison me. Some truths are too heavy to carry out loud. Instead, I poured my energy into building something new. I took on more freelance clients, built a small web design agency from our kitchen table. Ryan quit his job in finance and found work with a local firm, smaller paycheck, less pressure, but more peace. We painted the walls of our new house together, argued over curtain colours, laughed over mismatched IKEA furniture, ate dinner at the same table every night. Quiet, simple things that felt almost sacred after everything we'd been through. Then, one night, about 6 months later, I handed Ryan a small envelope. He opened it, read the note, looked up at me. "You're pregnant?" I nodded. "About 10 weeks. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just got up, crossed the room, and hugged me like he never wanted to let go. "I didn't think we'd get here," he whispered. "Me neither." A few weeks later, we got a letter from Becca. It was short. Apologetic, said she'd started therapy, that she didn't know how much damage she'd done because she was so wrapped up in Loretta's world, that she wanted to be better, not for us, but for herself. I didn't write back. Maybe one day I will. But for now, forgiveness is a long road and I'm still walking it. We visited Loretta once. Ryan asked if we could. Said he needed to see her, not for reconciliation, but for closure. She was thinner, quieter, worn down in a way I'd never seen before. Her eyes lit up when she saw Ryan walk in, until she saw me. And then, just like that, the warmth vanished. She muttered some half-hearted apology, said it got out of hand, that she didn't mean to go that far. But not once did she say she was sorry for what she intended, only for what it turned into. We left after 10 minutes. Ryan didn't say a word in the car, just stared out the window, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You okay?" I finally asked. He nodded. "I just needed to see it for myself. That she's not the person I thought she was. Now we're okay. Our baby girl was born in the spring, healthy, loud, and with a full head of dark hair. We named her June. After the month, everything changed. The month I almost lost everything, and then found what really mattered. Ryan still has bad days. So do I. Trauma doesn't follow a schedule. But when June cries in the middle of the night and we take turns rocking her back to sleep, there's peace in that rhythm, like life decided to give us another shot. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd eaten those chocolates, If Ryan hadn't taken the first bite, if we hadn't asked questions or gone to the house or found the policies, if we had just trusted that smiling mask Loretta wore so well, I don't know where we'd be. But I know this, not eating that chocolate, that saved my life. And maybe in a roundabout way, Ryan eating it saved his too, because it finally showed him who his family really was. People talk a lot about healing like it's this big, beautiful transformation. But sometimes, healing looks like changing your number, blocking some people for good, and buying a small house with chipped paint where you feel safe. It looks like standing in a kitchen with someone who almost died, holding a baby you never thought you'd have, saying, "We're still here, and that's enough." Story 3, you ever realize your family's favorite child isn't just a metaphor, it's you, except not you, you're the other one, the extra, the spare. That was my reality. My name's Riley Carter. I'm 24. My twin sister's name is Hayley. She's 4 minutes older, and apparently those 240 seconds came with VIP status in our family. Growing up, our parents Jim and Claire acted like we were two wildly different species. Hayley got glittery new dolls, brand name clothes, ballet lessons. I got secondhand Barbies, missing limbs and pep talks like, "You're tough, Riley, you'll figure it out." I wasn't even bitter at first. I just noticed. Like how when Hayley scraped her knee, Mum practically called the ambulance. When I broke a toe tripping over a soccer ball, walk it off. There's one moment that's permanently seared into my brain. I was 5. Hayley and I were playing at the park, and she got scared climbing this tall jungle gym. She started crying. I was terrified too, but I climbed up, jumped down, hoping they'd be proud of me. Maybe they'd say I was brave. Instead, my dad rushed to hug Hayley, called her brave for trying. Looked at me and said, "Be careful next time, Riley, you'll hurt yourself." Then he walked off. That pretty much set the tone. When we started school, the difference became louder. Hayley brought home a sloppy paper snowflake she made in art class, and my mum nearly cried. "You're so talented!" Meanwhile, I had won a short story contest and placed in a drawing competition. Their reaction? That's nice. Don't get too full of yourself. Cool. By the time we were 10, I'd learned not to expect equal footing. Once, we brought home our report cards. I had straight A's. Hayley had a mix of B's and C's. Guess who got a pizza night? Hint, not the straight A kid. Apparently, I didn't need validation. I was independent. Hayley, on the other hand, was fragile and needed encouragement. Their words, not mine. But hey, you adapt. You stop asking for praise and start building a life that doesn't depend on it, quietly, persistently. Fast forward to senior year, we were both about to graduate high school, and strangely enough, both decided to major in accounting. For me, it made sense. I liked structure, order, rules. Hayley? I think she just picked what sounded practical. Our parents jumped in immediately to cover her tuition in full, no hesitation, paid the whole thing up front so she wouldn't stress. When I asked about my college fund, they looked at me like I'd just asked them to finance a space mission. "You're smart," Mum said. "You'll land a scholarship, and you can always work part-time." "You'll manage." It stung. Of course it did. But it also lit something in me. If I was going to do this alone, I was going to do it right. I applied for every grant, scholarship, and financial aid program I could find. I landed a partial scholarship and picked up shifts at the campus library. I cleaned dorm hallways on weekends. I skipped parties to review tax law and study during lunch breaks. My life was a spreadsheet of hustle. Hayley, meanwhile, roomed in a cushy apartment, wore trendy outfits, and used networking events as an excuse to party. Our paths crossed sometimes cafeteria, courtyard, but her remarks were always the same. "You look exhausted, Riley. You should take care of yourself more." I'd smile and say, "Thanks, I'll keep that in mind." And then I'd go back to work. Eventually, I landed an internship at a small audit firm. It wasn't glamorous. I started off fetching coffee and organizing files, but I soaked up everything. Slowly, they let me assist with reports, even sit in on client meetings. It was more hands-on experience than most students ever got. Then came my second year. I met Professor Charles Merton. He taught a grueling elective on international accounting standards, and he had the vibe of someone who could sniff out laziness from a mile away. After our first lecture, he pulled me aside and said, "You've got something. Where did you study before this?" I just laughed. "Nowhere special. I just read a lot. Practice a lot." 2 weeks later, he offered me a position as his assistant, grading papers, prepping course materials, helping him with research. I called my mum that night, stupidly hoping she'd be excited. Her reaction, "That's good, Riley." Anyway, Haley just got invited to a professor's mixer downtown. She's so excited. Yeah. I stopped calling after that. Months passed. I kept grinding. By then, I'd taken 2 parts of the CPA early, scored well, and one night, while locking up the library after a late shift, I got an email with the subject line, "Ford Accounting Scholarship Application Invite." Now, this scholarship, it was a big deal. Only 5 students across the country received it each year. Full coverage, career-launching connections. I hadn't even applied. Turns out, Professor Merton had nominated me himself. I almost dropped my phone. He believed in me more than my own family ever had. It took me weeks to complete the application essays, documentation, recommendations, project summaries. Merton edited everything with the sharpness of a surgeon. He never once sugarcoated it, and I was grateful. When I hit submit, I let it go. I didn't tell Haley. Didn't tell my parents. Why bother? 3 months later, I opened my inbox and saw it. "Congratulations. You are a recipient of the 2023 Ford Scholarship." I sat there, frozen, laughing, crying, laughing again. I did it. I did it. And now came the next step, the award ceremony. I was told I could bring 2 guests. Did I want to? Honestly, I wasn't sure. But a part of me, the part that still craved a flicker of pride from them, dialed the number. "Hi, Mum. So, remember that big scholarship competition I mentioned, sort of? What about it? I won." Silence. "Really? That's... Wow. Let me get your dad." They eventually agreed to come. I could hear the skepticism in their voices. Like they didn't know what kind of event this was. 2 weeks later, we were seated in the ornate auditorium of one of the top universities in the state. Haley showed up too, dressed like it was a gala. Mom and Dad looked vaguely uncomfortable. And then my name was called. The presenter said my name slowly, clearly. "Riley Carter is one of the most determined, resilient students we've seen in years. She worked as a janitor and librarian to fund her education. Today, she ranks in the top 2% of her class. Applause, cheers, flashbulbs. I walked across that stage with my heart pounding. I dared to look toward the crowd. My dad looked stunned. My mum looked blank. Haley? Confused. Maybe a little threatened. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I felt powerful, seen. For the first time, they looked at me like I was real, not the spare twin, not the one who would figure it out. Just Riley, me. After the ceremony, the crowd filtered out to the reception hall name tags, little buffet plates, champagne flutes. I kept getting stopped by people in suits I'd never met. A woman from a big New York audit firm shook my hand and said, "We've heard great things about you, Riley. Let's talk after the semester." There's space on our team for someone like you." Meanwhile, across the room, I could see my parents standing awkwardly by the coffee station. Hayley was scrolling through her phone, not even pretending to be impressed. For once, she wasn't the center of attention, and I don't think she liked how that felt. Eventually, they walked over. My mum smiled, thin and stiff. "We had no idea it was such a big deal." I nodded. "Yeah, well, it is." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something comforting, but nothing came out. My dad cleared his throat. "We always knew you'd do well, Riley. We just thought you didn't need help. You're so independent." I looked at him for a long second. "I didn't have a choice, Dad. You made sure of that." He didn't argue, just looked down at his shoes. And honestly, I wasn't even trying to pick a fight. I was just done pretending. That night, after they left, I stayed at the reception a while longer. I got to know the other scholarship winners. Every single one had a story. First-gen students, kids who worked 2 jobs, people who had been overlooked and underestimated. It felt like the first time I was surrounded by people who got it. There was this moment I was standing outside, alone for a second, looking up at the string lights swaying over the lawn, and I felt calm, like I had cracked through something, like all those years of silence and pushing through had brought me here, not to spite them, not even for their approval, for me. The week after, I got a call from the New York firm. They were offering me a position entry-level auditor, training included, with housing assistance for the first few months. I told them yes before they could finish the sentence. I didn't even hesitate. I was ready. Hayley found out somehow, probably through Mom. She messaged me a day later. "So you're really leaving? New York? That's pretty far." I stared at her message for a while. Then I just typed, "Yeah, it's a good opportunity," she replied with a thumbs up emoji. That was it. But later that evening, she showed up at my dorm unannounced. I hadn't seen her in weeks. She walked in like she owned the place, still dressed, like she just stepped out of a fashion blog, but her energy was different. Not smug, not condescending, just off. She sat on my bed without asking. Looked around. "So this is where you live?" I nodded. "Yeah, glamorous, huh?" She laughed a little, not in a mean way. I guess I never really thought about how different our setups were. "I didn't say anything," she sighed. "I always assumed you were fine. You made it look easy." I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't. But thanks. Then she looked at me, and there was something I'd never seen in her face before, uncertainty. "I'm not sure what I'm doing after graduation," she said. "I thought I had more time, or options. I don't know." There it was, the crack in the golden child armor. She wasn't used to feeling lost. That was always my role. But now, tables had turned, and she could feel it. The structure our parents had built around her was starting to wobble. And for the first time, she didn't know how to stand on her own. "I'm not trying to be dramatic," she said, fiddling with the strap on her purse. "But it feels like everything's changing too fast." I shrugged. "It is. But that's life." She looked like she wanted me to give her some reassurance, like maybe I had some secret blueprint, but I didn't. She stood up. "Well, I hope it works out in New York." "It will," I said simply. And she left. Over the next couple of weeks, I packed up my life into 2 suitcases. My room was bare. I had sold my old microwave to another student for $20, gave away some clothes I'd outgrown, said goodbye to the library where I used to clean floors and shelve books, and sometimes cry in the back room when things felt too hard. The night before my move, I got a call from my grandma. She's the only one who ever made me feel truly seen growing up. She lived out of state and didn't visit often, but whenever she did, she brought warmth with her warmth my own parents never quite managed. "I heard about your scholarship," she said, voice soft but proud. "I knew you'd do something incredible one day." I closed my eyes and smiled. "Thanks, Grandma. I wish you could have been there." "Oh, honey," she said. I was there in spirit. "I always am." I cried a little after we hung up, not because I was sad, because that tiny bit of love felt louder than all those years of silence. My parents didn't help me move. They didn't offer to drive me, or even ask when I was leaving. I shot them a text the morning of my flight, on my way to New York. "Thanks for everything." My dad replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Fitting, the plane took off, and as I watched the skyline fade beneath the clouds, I realized I wasn't carrying their expectations anymore, or their absence, or their approval. Just me. Just Riley. Landing in New York was like exhaling for the first time in years. The city didn't know me. It didn't expect anything from me. It didn't have a checklist of who I was supposed to be. I got off the plane, grabbed my bags, and stood on the curb outside LaGuardia like a blank slate. The wind was biting, the cabs were shouting, and somewhere deep in my chest, something clicked into place. This was mine. All of it. The mess, the noise, the beginning. The first few weeks were tough. The job was intense, long hours, tight deadlines, client calls that made my stomach drop, but I didn't flinch. I was used to being the one who had to figure things out. And now, at least I was being paid to. I started as a junior auditor, but my manager quickly noticed how fast I picked things up. I got moved on to a bigger project, then another. Before long, I was leading small teams, mentoring interns, working side by side with managers who didn't care where I came from, just what I could do. And I could do a lot. Some nights I stayed late, walking out of the office after dark, tired but satisfied. I'd get a slice of pizza on the way home, sit by my tiny apartment window, and look out at the skyline thinking, this is what it feels like to build something on your own terms. Back home, things started shifting, slowly, but I could feel it. Mum started texting more, random things. "How are things going? Saw something on the news about your firm. Your aunt says hi." I answered sometimes, short and polite, but I didn't open the door wider than that. Dad emailed me once, too. A single line, "Hope you're doing all right out there. No punctuation." Classic. Haley, on the other hand, sent me a message that had more edge. "Mum and Dad keep comparing me to you now. They expect me to figure everything out like you did." I stared at that one for a long time. Then just typed, "Maybe now you know how it felt growing up." She didn't reply. A few months later, I flew home for a weekend. Not for them, there was a conference nearby, and my firm wanted me to represent the team. While I was in town, I agreed to stop by for dinner. Just dinner. The house looked the same, but the energy felt different. Or maybe I felt different. They tried small talk. My mum asked about work. My dad grunted a few affirmations. Haley barely made eye contact. At one point, my mum said, "We're really proud of you, Riley." I nodded. "Thanks." She kept looking at me, like she was searching for the version of me she used to know, the quiet, second place, daughter who always just smiled and moved aside. But that girl was gone. And I think they could feel it. I didn't offer updates. I didn't try to fill the silence. I didn't ask if they were proud. I didn't need to. After dessert, I stood up and grabbed my coat. "Thanks for dinner," I said. My mum looked like she wanted to say more, but I walked out before she could. Not out of anger, just peace. Back in the city, I kept building. I moved into a better apartment, led bigger teams, mentored more interns. The girl who once cleaned dorm hallways now sat in conference rooms with CEOs. I still kept my head down, still worked harder than most people realized, but now I wasn't trying to earn love. I was just living. One day I got a message on LinkedIn from Haley. "Hey, I'm thinking about changing careers. Do you have any advice?" I blinked at the screen. Was this growth? I typed out a short response. "Start with what you're actually interested in. Everything else follows." She thanked me. No bitterness, no sarcasm, just thanks. That was new. We didn't become close after that. But something shifted. The air between us cleared a little. And that was enough. It's been a few years now. Sometimes people ask me how I did it, how I made it through with no safety net, no support system, no parental cheering section. And the truth is, sometimes I didn't know I was going to make it. There were nights I cried quietly in a library closet. Mornings I woke up with aching feet and nothing in my fridge but instant noodles. Days I doubted everything, but I kept going anyway, because somewhere deep down, I knew the love I never got wasn't a measure of my worth. It was just a gap I'd have to learn to fill on my own. And I did. Not with revenge, not with bitterness, just with quiet, steady building, brick by brick, step by step. I don't talk to my parents much anymore. We exchange holiday texts, maybe a birthday call. That's about it, and I'm okay with that. They're not villains, they're just people with limits. And I finally stopped shrinking myself to fit inside them. I made peace with being the spare kid, because in the end, that spare became her own foundation. And honestly, that's the best plot twist I could have asked for.